This whole idea of converting a school bus and making a skoolie kind of came into my head about a year and a half ago. And I talked to a friend of mine with the idea of converting a bus, and for some reason he was on board. It was an idea of his as well, so we decided to go half in on this entire project. And we finally found a bus after a few months of searching on March 20th, 2022. We purchased the bus for $5,000. It was in the middle of Pennsylvania, about 2.5 hours from where I live in New Jersey. We brought the bus back with the help of one of my friends who was familiar with driving larger vehicles, and we finally got it back home, and that's kind of where the project started. Now, the bus sat for about 2 to 3 weeks while we were kind of getting a game plan of what we wanted for this particular bus, and a layout and everything that we wanted to do to plan it out to make it a little bit easier as we were doing the whole conversion. Now, here and there's a bunch of things that went on as far as smaller projects, but I want to tackle the most interesting projects and the things where I felt that really shaped this bus and turned it into something completely new. Our first major project on the bus was the roof raise, and with a lot of calculations and a lot of parts being delivered beforehand, so we had everything ready for the weekend of, we finally did the roof raise and completed the roof raise on June 10th of 2022. And this roof raise I felt was the most critical part of the build, because after the roof raise, everything could kind of go back on. Before the roof raise, everything was being taken off to prepare for paint, as well as any new metal that needed to be added, any new sheet metal that needed to be added, and everything welded to the outside of the bus. So I tried to take as much off the bus as possible to get the whole bus prepped and ready for the exterior to be finished so that we can work on the inside. And that leads up to the next point and the next big project of the bus. That being the paint job. The bus was completely painted except for the roof on July 16th, 2022. We ran into some complications with the bus after it was painted. We got a small sample of the paint to make sure that it's the color that we wanted, and then once we painted it on the bus, it turned out that it was very, very light and not the color we actually wanted. So I decided to paint the entire bus again by getting some extra paint from Sherwin-Williams. And the second paint job was a lot darker and it turned out perfect. A little while after that, we decided that we wanted to fully paint the roof, but we got the elastomeric paint for the roof and finally painted the roof, so the whole exterior of the bus was complete. After the bus was done on the exterior, as far as the paint, we started working on things on the interior, the first being the subfloor so that we could kind of get a game plan of where the whole layout and all the framing was going to be inside of the bus. Once that was complete, we decided that we wanted to start running some small electrical stuff and other things as we were placing new units inside of the bus. But one of the main things that we wanted to accomplish inside of the bus before we got a lot of the framing up was the AC and heat. And that's where we went with a ducted mini split unit that was mounted in the back of the bus, where we would have ductwork that go through the ceiling of the bus and up through different parts of the bus so that the entire bus was heated and cooled by this one unit. This was another thing that took a decent amount of planning and some calculations with a lot of help from people from YouTube. So it was very helpful to hear from a community that knew a lot more about this than I did, so that everything worked out and we didn't have any complications going through the build. With this unit installed but not fully hooked up, because we didn't have the entire electrical system installed inside the bus, we decided to work on some other projects inside of the bus. One of those projects being the plumbing. With none of the wall panels up and the framing installed, it was very easy to run all the lines to the back of the bus where the water tanks would be installed, as well as the water pump and the filtration system. A short while later, on November 5th, 2022, we had most of the cabinets installed inside of the bus. Not every single one was stained and the drawers weren't on yet, but we had the cabinets and we knew exactly where they were going to be so that we could finish a lot of the framing inside of the bus. We had the kitchen cabinets on one side of the bus, as well as some storage cabinets and drawers and cabinets in the back of the bus so that we could have articles of clothing and anything that we needed to change into in the back of the bus. There were some extra cabinets inside of the bathroom, as well as next to the refrigerator that were also installed, as well as the upper cabinets throughout the bus. We did add some electrical as far as LED lights inside and underneath the cabinets. They weren't fully installed until we did all the electrical inside the bus, when we knew where and when everything was going to be installed. With the cabinets installed, the next thing we wanted to focus on was the countertops. And we didn't want to add a lot of weight to the bus, so we decided to make our own countertops with an epoxy pour. We started with some MDF and particle board, and after a little bit of sanding and a little bit of cleanup work, we were ready to pour an epoxy in our own pattern to make sure that we had some unique and custom countertops that didn't weigh that much for the bus. We had 2 cabinets for the kitchen area, one on one side of the bus, one on the other, and we also had the countertop in the bathroom that had the same epoxy pour. Since the bathroom was in a different area than the actual shower, we decided that we wanted to work on the shower so that when we put the tile in the kitchen area and the bathroom, we were able to put the tile in the shower the same exact day. So the shower did go through a few different phases to complete, and it wasn't complete at one exact time. It took a few months to complete it based off of different things inside of the bus that needed to get put up together so that we didn't have any drawbacks or we didn't have anything up that we needed to take down again to run any extra plumbing or electrical inside of the bus. So the main part of the shower to finish off the shower in the back of the bus was complete between February 7th and March 7th. It was about a 1-month span that the majority of the shower took place to finally complete it so that it was in usable, working condition. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the electrical components and a lot of the electrical wire were run at different times inside of the bus. But a majority of the electrical system took place at one time, and once that electrical system was installed inside of the bus, we needed something to power it, which was the solar on the roof. And the big major solar project and the solar panels that went onto the roof, that took place on April 17th, 2023. This was about 1 year after we actually really started working on the bus after we bought it. We installed 6 solar panels that would bring in roughly 1,380 watts of power inside of the bus to help with the electrical system as well as charge the batteries underneath the couch. The solar panels and the electrical system also did take a decent amount of math and planning to make sure that we didn't have any complications and that we did have thick enough wires so that the system could run with no issues. I made sure that it went with all Victron components inside the bus so that they could talk to each other, and it was a very reliable company. But after this day on April 17th, the entire electrical system was in working and complete order after the solar panels went up. Now that we were getting down to the wire of the day that we wanted to actually start driving this thing, and a lot of the components inside the bus were getting completely finished and in working order, we decided the one area that we didn't really put a lot of time into was the driver's area. But we wanted to make sure that this driver's area up here was comfortable for us to drive so that we could drive this bus and have no issues with sitting up here. That included adding some sound deadening pads to the floor, as well as a carpet to the floor, and then finishing up the area where we had the switches and the reverse camera so that we could monitor ourselves while we were driving. But as far as a driving area, this area is complete enough for us to drive it. And speaking of driving it, we finally did our first test drive inside of the bus on May 22nd, 2023. It wasn't a far drive, it was a few miles to make sure everything was fine and the bus wasn't having any complications while driving. There are a few other things we want to finish up in the bus and add to the bus to make it a little bit more unique and driver friendly. But those are things in the future. We made it all the way from March 20th, 2022 to July 10th, 2023 with a 99.9% complete bus. And I appreciate all of you watching the past episodes to see what we actually had to do to get to where we are today. So with that said, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next video.